time has arrived for to welcome Lina Teose and her Estonian dance ensemble. We're so pleased to have you all here this evening. Before they begin, I want to thank you all for changing your shoes and being careful with the dance floor, and so thank you very much for your efforts in that. We're going to turn the time over to Lina to say a little introduction about your group, and so let's give them a warm welcome.
Welcome to Estonia. A mix of old folkloric village dances and newly choreographed dances tonight. The first dance you saw was Kuppari Mori. This is a folkloric dance meant for the whole village to dance. This next one is called Kalamees, or the fisherman. You can see the dancers, again, a folkloric dance. You can see the dancers, they are on a fishing boat first, fishing to the left, and then they're fishing to the right. Then they've got so many fish in their boat that they're swooshing the fish so that the fish are not in piles on the bottom of the ship. And then they're kind of patting it down, and then they're celebrating. Kalamees. So you just saw the folkloric fisherman Kalamees dance. Well, Estonian dance is not always the same, not like put into a museum and it never changes. Estonian dance is constantly evolving. New dances are created based upon the steps and the music of old folkloric dances. Now here is a newly choreographed fisherman dance. You can recognize some of the steps, you can recognize some of the music. This is the newly choreographed Kalamees dance. which means keeper of the flame. And that is our reason for existing. We are keeping the flame of Estonian folk dance, culture, heritage, language alive here in Portland, so far away from Estonia. And we are teaching it to our children so that we are really keepers of the flame. Tulehoidjad. Now we'd like to dance again, folkloric dances. This is called Ingliskat. In the Estonian folk dance repertoire, there are many dances called Ingliskat. And they all have the same feature that the partners start in long lines facing each other. Well, this is a medley of 3 folkloric Ingliskat dancers, of 3 Ingliskat dances. Our troupe has been in existence since 1950, continually dancing until today. In October, we celebrate our 75th anniversary. And some of us have been dancing kids in this folk dance troupe for over 60 years, maybe over 70 years. We are truly a folk dance troupe of so many ages. We have a 70-year gap between the oldest dancer and our youngest dancer, and everything in between. Well, now we're going to see that in Estonia, the mothers had many things they had to teach their daughters. How to milk the cow, how to weave the wool, how to keep the sheep, how to feed the chickens, how to keep a household. There's so many things she needed to teach her daughter. Also, she needed to teach her daughter how to dance really well, because at the village dances, the better that her daughter was able to dance, the more she could catch the eye of the eligible young bachelors, and the more chance she had of finding a husband. This is Rish Purkadivan. Our next dance, Roxy-Yok, is a dance with a dilemma. Who you see in the middle, you see Yok. Yok is the man's name, and poor Yok, he has a dilemma. He has two women who are trying to catch his eye and who would like to have him choose them as their partner. What will he do? that he would dance with both women. Well, so we see all different kinds of dances, the folkloric dances, the newly choreographed dances. This is called now Ganga Putumine, or this is the weaving dance. Estonia is a really small country, but it has 15 counties. Every county has its own distinct folk costume. And so that's why you see all the variations in the folk costumes. Well, in the olden days, you couldn't go to the store and buy the striped woolen fabric. You had to weave it at home. Well, this is the weaving dance. It's the work dance, and it shows the steps that are taken during the weaving of these colorful skirts. So you see the weaving process, and then you will notice the stitching. They're going to be stitching the fabric together, and at the end they're pulling and stretching the fabric to make sure that it's really well woven and stitched. Ganga Putumine, the weaving dance. or the scarf dance. This was a wonderful and is a wonderful dance just to dance, and you don't have to know that the steps are exactly the same. This is kind of improvisatory dance, kind of like a game dance that the whole village could dance. So this is what I've done. Now you can see that the dancers, each couple has a scarf that they're holding between their hands. The colors of the scarves are blue, black, and white. Now these are not just random colors like pink, fuchsia, and orange. The colors have a deep meaning for the Estonian people. They're the colors of the Estonian flag. The blue is for the sky above Estonia. The black is for the fertile soil of Estonia. The white is for the pure soul of the Estonian people. So this is Radika. In Estonia, one of the main celebrations that people had in their lives was a wedding. Now, in Estonia, a wedding was not so that you would go to the church, have the ceremony, have a piece of cake to punch and go home. That's not how weddings were in Estonia. In Estonia, weddings would last for many days. And it was the bride's family who fed the village. The beer and the meals and everything would last for days. And this would last until the bride's family decided that we run out of food. It's time to go home. So they would feed the people who were at the wedding celebration, they would feed them cabbage soup. And that was the signal for everyone to know it was time to go home. So, this is a warning for everyone. If you're ever at a wedding and if you're fed cabbage soup, you know it's time to go home. Well, this is called pulmadus, which means the wedding celebration. You will see now Vana Isa Polka, or the grandfather's polka. Now this dance is not meant for grandfathers to dance. This dance is for young people to dance, and they're imitating what it would be like to dance if they were grandparents. Vana Isa Polka. I'd like to let you know that the highlight of the Estonian people is the Mass Song Festival and Dance Festival that is held in Tallinn, the capital city of Estonia, every 5 years. The first weekend in July, in the specially built Song Festival Amphitheater, will sing a choir of 30,000 singers to an audience of 100,000 on live television. At the same weekend, there is going to be the Mass Dance Festival, where 10,000 Estonian folk dancers are dancing in a football field-sized stadium to an audience in bleachers for an audience of 14,000 people, 3 identical performances. And that is coming up this July. And we'd like to tell you that we found out recently that we auditioned to dance in that dance festival, and we have been accepted. Wow. So we will be in Estonia this July. But now, we'd like to dance for you Oige ja Vasema. Of all of the Estonian dances that Estonians know all over the world, this is the most widely danced and one of the most popular dances. So I just want to warn you, if you've been dozing off a little bit during some of the other dances, look very carefully at this one. I won't tell you why. we would like to dance Tulyak. Tulyak is the traditional Estonian wedding dance. It is danced at every Estonian wedding, everywhere. In Estonia, in Portland, in Australia. If there's an Estonian that is getting married, or in their wedding reception, the dancers that know this dance will dance it. Now, look carefully at the dance, because you can actually see the story of the young couple. In the beginning, they are getting to know each other. Then they have a little bit of a disagreement, which they make up. Now, the slow, quiet part in the middle, that is actually the wedding ceremony, followed by the celebration.